Have you ever wondered why it feels like some people can earn the exact same amount of money, but one person starts building wealth while the other just feels like they're drowning? Well, the answer isn't really about luck, and it's definitely not about intelligence. It's about a brutal economic principle that most of us never get taught. The answer is in the simple, and I mean brutal, mathematics of being broke.
So, picture this. You're driving to work, minding your own business, and then it happens. The check engine light comes on. Your heart just drops, right? You know deep down the repair is probably going to be around $300, but you check your account and you've only got $42 to last till payday. So what do? You do what anyone would do. You ignore it, you turn up the radio, and you just pray it goes away. Well, 2 months later, the car dies. On the highway. Now it's a $200 tow, a $2,000 transmission repair, and maybe $300 in lost wages because you can't get to your job. That quote you see on screen? Yeah, that's the reality.
You see, that catastrophe, it wasn't just a fluke. It's a measurable, totally suffocating cost that comes with not having money in the first place. The fundamental truth we're going to break down in this explainer is that being broke is, ironically, the most expensive way to live. You literally end up paying a premium for, well, everything.
So what's going on here? Is this just a string of really unfortunate events, or is there some kind of hidden principle at work? A sort of financial gravity that just pulls you down harder the less you have? Well, it turns out there is. And there's a surprisingly simple story that explains this whole phenomenon perfectly.
You know, it's funny. This concept, it actually comes from a Terry Pratchett fantasy novel, but it explains the wealth gap better than most economics textbooks I've ever read. It's called the Boots Theory, and the math behind this simple little story is devastatingly real.
Okay, so let's meet two guys. We'll call them Rich Richard and Poor Peter. Now, Rich, he can afford a really good pair of high-quality $50 leather boots. They're well-made, they're going to last him a decade. Poor Peter, on the other hand, he only has $10, so he's forced to buy a cheap pair of boots that, basically fall apart in the rain after just 1 year. Okay, so this is where the math just becomes devastating. Over 10 years, Rich Richard spends his $50 just one time. His feet are dry, he's comfortable, no problem. But poor Peter, he has to buy new $10 boots every single year. So over that same decade, he ends up spending $100. He's paid double, his feet are probably wet half the time, and he's even further behind than when he started.
And that is the core of it all. When you don't have capital, you are forced to pay a premium just to survive. Wealthy people, they can make decisions based on the total cost of something over time. But when you're broke, you're forced to decide based on what you can afford right now. And believe me, this pattern, it shows up everywhere.
So this poverty premium, it isn't just about a pair of boots. No way. It's this hidden penalty, this tax that's baked into almost every single aspect of daily life, from the groceries you buy to the way you bank.
I mean, let's talk about something as basic and boring as toilet paper, because this is where the math just starts to feel absurd.
Okay, so if you have $50 to spare, you can go to a big warehouse store and buy one of those giant mega packs of toilet paper. Your cost per roll ends up being about 50 cents. Great deal. But what if you're living paycheck to paycheck? You don't have $50 to lock up in toilet paper inventory. You have maybe $4. So you have to go to the corner store and buy a small pack, where the cost for roll is $1.50. You are paying 3 times more for the exact same product just because you couldn't afford to buy in bulk.
And if you thought that was bad, it gets even more infuriating when we look at banking. The system is, and I mean this quite literally, designed to profit from people precisely when they are most vulnerable.
Just think about this for a second. Let's say you have just $20 in your account and a forgotten $25 subscription hits. Whoops, you're now negative $5. Well, the bank doesn't cover you out of the kindness of their hearts. Oh no, they slam you with a $35 overdraft fee. So you effectively just borrowed $5 for a day and paid $35 for the privilege. You know what that is? That's an annual percentage rate of over 700%. If a loan shark did that, they'd go to prison. When a bank does it, it's just called standard policy.
And all this financial stress, it takes a massive psychological toll. I mean, studies on what's called the scarcity mindset show that the constant anxiety of worrying about money actually lowers your functional IQ by about 13 points. It's like having way too many tabs open in your brain. It's so consumed with immediate survival that you literally lose the bandwidth for long-term strategic thinking. This is why someone might make a decision that looks totally irrational from the outside, like taking a payday loan. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's just pure cognitive overload.
So what about just getting to work? I mean, unless you live in one of a handful of cities, you pretty much need a car. And this, right here, is where the poverty premium becomes a full-blown trap.
See, someone with good credit and some savings can buy a reliable used car. But if you've got bad credit and no savings, you end up at one of those buy here, pay here lots.
They might sell you a car that's actually worth $4,000, but they'll slap you with a 24% interest rate. Over the life of that loan, you end up paying $15,000. And the worst part? A lot of times, the car breaks down before you've even paid it off. You're just trapped.
And this premium just pops up everywhere you look. Housing? I mean, when you're renting, you're paying your landlord's mortgage plus their profit, and you're building zero equity for yourself. What about time? Think about the hours spent at a laundromat or taking 3 buses to get to a grocery store that has fresh produce. That's a time tax you can't spend earning money. And health? A small dental issue that you ignore because you can't afford it, that turns into a root canal. It all just adds up and up and up.
So, okay, the system is unfair. The math is brutal. How in the world do you escape? Well, you stop playing defense. You stop just trying to survive. You have to go on offense. And the first step isn't about trying to get rich, it's just about stopping the financial bleeding.
This right here is probably the most critical concept. That first $1,000 emergency fund, it isn't just boring advice from your parents. It is your weapon. This buffer is what lets you fix a flat tire without taking out a payday loan. It's what lets you buy the bulk toilet paper. It is the tool that breaks the penalty cycle. I want you to forget what standard financial advice says about investing for an 8% return. Look, if you have credit card debt at 20% interest, paying that off is a guaranteed 20% return on your money. That is an absolutely unbeatable investment. The best return you can possibly get is to stop paying the penalties for being broke.
So, how do you do it? You escape by buying back your freedom one strategic decision at a time. And here's a really clear, actionable plan to do just that.
Okay, first step, you need to audit your vampire costs. All those little places where you're bleeding money just because you don't have money. Second, you start building that small buffer we talked about. Even just $500 can be enough to block the most common penalties. Third, you identify your single biggest financial leak, whether that's a high-interest car payment or constant late fees, and you attack it relentlessly. And finally, once that leak is plugged, you just move on to the next one.
And this is probably the most important takeaway of all. This is not about being bad with money. It's not a moral failing on your part. It is a mathematical problem. And once you start to see it that way, you can stop blaming yourself, and you can start attacking the penalties. You stop playing their game, and you start playing yours.
Look, this isn't fast, and it sure isn't easy, but it's math, and math doesn't lie. Every single dollar you stop paying in what I call the broke tax is a dollar that finally starts working for you instead of against you. So the only question left is the one you see on your screen right now. Which penalty will you attack first?